Om. Om. Satchidananda-rupaya Vishwotpatyadi-hetave Tapatraya-vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha. Janmadhyasya yatonvayaditarataschaiteshvabhignaswarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye Muhyanti Yatsurayaha Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadani Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Dharma Projita Kaitavotra Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam Vedyam Vastavamatra Vastu Shivadam Tapatrayon Mulanam Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Kim Va Parerishwaraha Sadyo Hridyavarudyate Trikritibihi Shushrushubistakshanat. Hariom from Orange, New Haven, Fairfield, suburb of Connecticut. I'm going to share with you, I'll call it a story, but really it's history that I had recently shared in Meaningful Mornings. A great sadhu in our culture, his name is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Some of you have seen images of him. When I see him, I'm reminded of Rishi Narada, one who sang and danced in reverence of Bhagavan Narayana. He would travel and teach. And one day, a family had invited him to sing and dance in their home. But in that home, earlier that day, their child had died. And naturally, the parents, particularly the father, who was a great devotee of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Bhagavan Narayana, were lost. Their child had just died. And in our culture, when a family member dies, then they're always put in an open area because they had a relationship with all people. But this father put this child in a corner of a room. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and he sensed that something wasn't right in this home. He knew the father, but he sensed something was not right. So he asked, "What are you thinking about? What are you feeling right now?" And he said, "I'm feeling happy that you're here. Please, Prabhu, continue with Kirtana." And he did. He sang, he danced, but he is great. He's able to feel what's inside someone's heart. But he wanted that father to share, so he asked again, "Tell me what happened." And that father had shared that earlier that morning that his child had died. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu shared, "Then how come you were open to having this satsang in your home?" And that father responded with sharing, "Bhagavan gave and Bhagavan called back. Why should you be stopped? Why should satsang be stopped? Bhagavan gave, Bhagavan called back." I share this with all of us because Vedanta and Bhagavata, this magical course, if you all think of study groups that you're part of, which one has gone on week after week after week for almost 5 years. This magical course is for those who believe in Bhagavan, in the divine, but the maturity, the vision of this course is for us not to believe in the divine, but to know the divine. If this father were a believer of the divine only, he wouldn't have continued with this invitation and this satsang. But he knew the divine. The divine gives, and the divine calls back. And this is why this course is called Vedanta in Bhagavata, or it is jnana of bhakti. To know what bhakti is, that way we know who Bhagavan is. How many of you are feeling that you've grown out of belief, you've even grown out of faith, that you now trust the divine? Awesome. This morning in the highest vocation, there was lots of you who joined because of the time change. I was sharing how the ego is described as anirvachaniya. It is inexplicable. And you know what's so lovely about the term inexplicable? That which can't be explained can't be real. However, Bhagavan also is inexplicable. Yeah, Bhagavan's not real either. Bhagavan is reality. See, there's a difference. There's a difference between being joyous and being joy, correct? Being joy is the nature, being joyous is the expression. Bhagavan is reality. The expression of that is, this is real and this is not real. I know you all got it. I'll continue. In the 12th section, the final section, in the 6th chapter, there's a description of our scripture and how Bhagavan Brahma, who is also known as one of the original teachers, he's contemplating. He's engaged in dhyana. And what does he feel inside of him? Nada. I'm not saying this in another language like nada, as in nothing. I'm saying nada. He just feels this presence, and it keeps on getting expressed to Gayatri Mantra. Last week when I was teaching class, I was too tired, as in too sleepy, to teach class. I tried hard to prepare, but I did a poor job last week. And so one of the mistakes I made in last week's class was sharing that Gayatri means Gayanam Trayate, but that's incorrect. It's Gayantam Trayate. Most of you still have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm not teaching you, I'm teaching myself. Please know that. Gayantam means that which sung, Trayate, causes one to evolve. In chapter 7, there is a sharing of the genesis. See, earlier was about scripture in general. In chapter 7, it's scripture in particular. The Purana, how many Puranas are there? 18. 18 Puranas. What does Purana mean? Ancient yet applicable. Ancient yet applicable. Like exercise. Imagine walking is Purana. It's ancient, right? It's an ancient exercise, but it's never going to go away. We make it go away, but it shouldn't go away. Ancient yet applicable. The original collector of the Purana is Rishi Vyasa. He took the 18 Puranas and placed them into 6 collections. So of these 18 Puranas, he clubbed them into 6 groups of 3. The math is good so far. And he taught these 6 collections to Rishi Roma Harshana. Rishi Roma Harshana. Rishi Roma Harshana taught this to 6 different rishis. So each of these 6 rishis learned 3 Puranas. And how this relates to us is Rishi Ugrashava. He's almost like the narrator of Srimad Bhagavatam. He became a disciple of each of these 6 rishis, which means he learned how many Puranas? All 18. He learned all 18 Puranas, which is why when you read a lot of these maps, you keep hearing Rishi Ugrashava or Sutaji. It's the same one. Now, the implication of this chapter, the final question in Srimad Bhagavatam is, where does Dharma live? And the answer is now being shared. It lives in the Purana. The Veda teaches Dharma and Brahma. Putting this in English, the Veda teaches us responsibilities that lead to oneness. What do the Puranas teach us? Not Dharma, but Bhakti. The Puranas teach us about dedication to divinity. Are they different? They're not different. But different strokes, maybe different folks have different strokes. So this is why this is being shared, that studying the Purana is equivalent to studying the Veda. In chapter 8, we get to meet Mark, Rishi Markandeya. And Rishi Markandeya there's so much social media being sent to him. Remember that arrow with the 5 heads? That's social media. Facebook, Instagram, X, Snapchat, TikTok. So he is sent this arrow with 5 heads. And I did do some of my research into what this arrow of 5 heads to distract Rishi Markandeya is. It is an arrow for each sense organ. It's an arrow to distract each sense organ. The subtlest sense organ we have is hearing, then touching, then seeing, then tasting, and finally smelling. And that's what I mentioned about social media. Each social media tries to capture a different sense organ, correct? Sort of like Instagram is more visual and Facebook is more reading and TikTok is more audio. Yes? You just say yes. Like I'd also heard in America, baseball was designed to listen to on the radio. Hockey was designed to watch on TV. The puck is so small. Basketball was designed to watch live. Nobody should be experiencing football. That's part of the design. But the most valuable teams are now the football teams. So Rishi Markandeya is awesome, and he's challenged with being distracted, but he is undistractable. And if I can share this in a very practical sense, a distraction is a distraction if you are distracted. If you are not distracted, don't say this and that is a distraction. You are responsible to be distracted or not distracted. He is so awesome that Rishi Naranarayana come to him. And Rishi Naranarayana, what are they casually known as in the Bhagavad Gita? Prince Arjuna and Bhagavan Krishna, Nara Narayana. Traditionally, they're not known as the famous 8 immortals. In our culture, we have a famous 8 immortals. One of them is Hanumanji. They're not included in this, but it is known in our culture that they still live in Badrinath. How many of you have been to Badrinath before? Good. That's where they live. And what are they doing there? Thinking peacefully. And our thoughts radiate, correct? So them thinking peacefully is actually creating peace for us. And they come to Rishi Markandeya and say, what boon do you want? And he's such a sneaky person. He's already seen them. They're Bhagwan, correct? So what does he ask for? I'd like to see Bhagwan's Maya. And that's how that chapter ends. So now we're in chapter 9. In chapter 9, like this whole section, there is an emphasis on pralaya. What does pralaya mean in English? Dissolution. When everything that can be taken away is taken away, but remember, there's still the foundation that remains. If an intense category 5 hurricane comes through a certain, let's say even this building, everything will be taken away, even the foundation, but the earth is not going to be taken away. That is the original basement, is the earth. Then there's basements upon basements and so on. So all of a sudden, Rishi Markandeya is experiencing pralaya. There's water everywhere. And he's running away from this water. And he finds this high ground. He finds this high tree. And he keeps following the trunk to the branch to the leaf. And what does he see on that land? A leaf? A caterpillar. Do you think that's the answer? He finds this, when we say baby Krishna, he finds this miniature Krishna. This miniature infant that's just smiling and sucking its own toe. And Rishi Markandeya is so exhausted, and he tries to go and speak to this being, and this being just breathes in, and there Rishi Markandeya is gone. He's gone into that being, and what does he see in the being? The whole multiverse. And he's earlier overwhelmed by sorrow. He thinks he's going to drown. Now he's overwhelmed by joy. He's seeing the multiverse. He's feeling the oneness. And then he's breathed out. He's back to that area of dissolution. And now, because he's feeling overwhelmed by joy, he tries to go and hug this being, and that being disappears, and the tree disappears, and the pralaya disappears, and Rishi Markandeya is left in his ashram. He wanted to see Maya, correct? And he got to see Maya. Not that this is something that you can explain logically. However, in our dreams, the last time you dreamt, that whole dream multiverse, all that's contained within it, video games, airplanes, food, and the dreamer, where is all of that contained? In one mind. Just your mind. And this comes out more clearly in the next chapter. In this class, we're going to cover chapters 10 and 11, and then I'll tell you what will happen after that. In chapter 10, we are on verse 23. This is Bhagwan Shiva, who's speaking to Rishi Markandeya. Nahyam mayani tirtani na devas chetanojitaha te punanturu kalena yuyam darshana matrataha. Joy. Why not? We should end every sentence with joy. So when you order pizza, you finish with joy. This is a really relevant teaching. Who's speaking to who? Bhagwan Shiva, not Shiva. He's not your friend. You call him by his first name. He's the multiverse father. So Bhagwan Shiva is speaking to Rishi Markandeya. And he says, Na he, which means indeed, ap mayani tirtani, which means the sacred waters, which are tirthas. They're places of pilgrimage, like going to the Ganga. But the key word is na, not. Na devaha chetanaha ujjitaha. Not devas who have no consciousness. This is referring to pilgrimages to mandirs where there are murtis. Who's saying this? Bhagwan Shiva, not Vivek. Bhagwan Shiva himself is sharing not pilgrimages of water, not pilgrimages to mandirs. Te, speaking to Rishi Markandeya, punanti urukalena. These pilgrimages of water and murtis, they purify, but they purify in a very long time. They do purify, but it's a slow journey. In contrast, Yuyam, a sadhu, a noble person like you, Rishi Markandeya, darshana matrataha, one gets purified just by seeing you. Just by seeing one who is a sadhu, one who is dedicated to Bhagwan, one gets purified. How many of you agree with this statement? Those who are hesitating, I'm going to remind you, who said this? If you don't agree with this statement, just think that means you know more than Bhagwan Shiva. Correct? You are Mahamrityu. So that's what I shared with you. It's one thing to believe in Bhagwan Shiva, but then when he makes a statement about how important it is to be in the presence of the great, and for you to compromise on that, it is a strong showing of one believing in Bhagwan Shiva, but not trusting Bhagwan Shiva. So this is the statement, and I've shared twice this week now. When you're in the presence of the great, what is the first feeling you have? You get humbled. And then if you're a seeker, you get inspired. You get humbled and then inspired. Isn't that what purification is? Here are some details. After Rishi Markandeya realized what Bhagwan's Maya is and how it can just wipe away someone, he stayed close to Bhagwan Hari. He lived close to him. He acted for him, spoke about him, thought about him. And it's so beautiful how Rishi Vyasa uses the word Hari. What does Hari mean? The one who takes away. Maya caused pralaya, which took everything away. But who's the one who can take away Maya? Bhagwan Hari. So he stays close to him. Now Bhagwan Hara, what's another name of his? Bhagwan Shiva. He and Bhagavati Uma, they're on vacation. So it's wintertime in Kailasha, it's too cold. So they're traveling the multiverse, and they happen to see Rishi Markandeya, who's close to Bhagwan Hari, and Bhagavati Uma just senses his greatness, and she says to Bhagwan Hara, you are the one who is gracious. Why don't you go and grace him with whatever he wants, with a boon? And Bhagwan Hara says, there's no point. He doesn't have desires. He doesn't even want mukti, as in he doesn't even want enlightenment. But Bhagwan Shiva shares, since you've brought this up, I want to go and have satsanga with him. That's what's awesome about Bhagwan Shiva. Even though he's Bhagwan, he's always, it's like he's a radar for satsang. Like people have a radar about which kind of people are around them or where the closest Starbucks is. For him, it's satsang. And when he goes to Rishi Markandeya, I told you Rishi Markandeya is feeling really close to Bhagavan Hari. He is contemplating. Please note that he's not on pilgrimage to a place of water. He's not on pilgrimage to a mandir. He is engaged in dhyana. And so Bhagavan Shiva is in front of him and he wants to talk to him. He wants to hear from him, but he's in dhyana. So Bhagavan Shiva, who's the original shapeshifter, he becomes so small that he enters into the heart of Rishi Markandeya. I didn't say nostril, I didn't say mouth, I didn't even say pore. I don't think our heart has pores. I don't think. So he had just entered into the heart of Rishi Markandeya, and Rishi Markandeya in his heart started to see Bhagavan Hara. And there's one lovely description where Bhagavan Hara's hair is described as flashy as lightning. And Rishi Markandeya feels like the sun is rising inside of him. That's very different than the usual Bhagavan Shiva imagery that we come across. And he's so moved by this, but that he can't help but open his eyes. And who's in front of him? Bhagavan Hara. See how sneaky Bhagavan Shiva is. He went into his heart to disturb his contemplation so he can have satsang. And when he sees Bhagavan Hara outside, remember, Bhagavan Hara is a great, great, great spouse. Bhagavati Uma asked him to go and grace him. So he went there and he said, "What boon can I offer to you?" You know what this makes me think about? When someone is a good fundraiser or there's an organization that is good in fundraising, people want to give more to them. So in this case, Rishi Markandeya is so great. What do great people want to do? Give to those who are great. Someone earlier said, Vivekji can take a word from Bhagavad Gita and take it to another planet. So really, he said, I misinterpret matters. So here I'm continuing with that misinterpretation. But here, and I want to read this carefully, Rishi Markandeya does ask Bhagavan Hara for a boon. Bhagavati Achyutam. To Bhagavan Narayana, Bhaktim. What is his boon? I just want bhakti to Bhagavan Achyuta. That's another name for Bhagavan Narayana. That's part one. Part two, this is all in one line. Tat Pareshu. Tat Pareshu means, and those who are also dedicated to Bhagavan. So I want bhakti to Bhagavan, and I want bhakti to bhaktas. So when you meet Bhagavan Hara, use Rishi Markandeya as a role model. If you can have anything. I gave this example to you. What gift do you give to someone who's rich? In that context I shared, you get enlightened because you reduce their vasanas. Here, if you are rich and you can get something, ask for bhakti. And Bhagavan Shiva is kind of feeling a little bit insecure. So Rishi Markandeya says, Tata Twai, and you. So I want bhakti to Bhagavan Narayana. I want bhakti to Bhagavan Narayana's bhaktas, and you. I feel that we often do that too. Like we invite all of these people and then we kind of, oh, you come too. But remember, who is Bhagavan Narayana's greatest bhakta? Bhagavan Shiva. We spent 2.5 years in Ramayana to lock that in. Now, one more aspect before we get into the final chapter on content. One of you had asked me, was it Rishi Markandeya who came up with the Rudra mantra, also commonly known as the Mahamrityunjaya mantra? So here are a couple of insights into this. Some people feel that the Mahamrityunjaya mantra is to be chanted when someone is dying. That is a not best use. It's not a best practice for the use of this mantra. This mantra is for those, not those who are dying, but those who are seeking, who want to be free. This mantra describes how a well-grown vegetable is attached to its vine, but this vegetable is on the ground. With a vegetable on the ground attached to its vine, it has nowhere to fall. If there's a really solid apple, it will fall then. It will outgrow its stem, correct? So what happens to that vegetable? Only when that farmer comes and separates it does it become free. See, this well-grown vegetable is not someone who's dying, it's someone who's seeking. That they've worked their hardest to be free, but they can't be free, so they surrender. Better, yes? So now, specifically, to my understanding, it was Rishi Vasishta who had this mantra revealed to him, not Rishi Markandeya. Okay? But there's lots of Puranas, so maybe Rishi Markandeya also had this revealed to him. And now we go into, again, the final chapter of content. Chapter 11, section 12. I'm taking us to one of the last verses. This is verse 49. It's such a visual verse. Vala kilya sahasrani shashtir brahmarishayo malaha puratobhi mukham yanti stunvanti stutibhir vibhum. Joy. That's your placeholder. I have to describe what happens for you to really know what this verse means, okay? Where did we start our journey in Srimad Bhagavatam? You can tell me in the chat or you can say it out loud. Where does Srimad Bhagavatam, these verses, these teachings begin? What place? Good. Very good. Naimi Sharanya. Naimi Sharanya typically is a jungle in Uttar Pradesh, but Naimi Sharanya in terms of etymology means where the mind becomes quiet. It's where your thoughts slow and stop. I have tried to name our home Naimi Sharanya, but a lot of resistance from my wife and kids. It's too long, we could barely pronounce it. But I'm a stubborn person and we will be named Naimi Sharanya. So in Naimi Sharanya, there's a satra that's happening. A satra means a long, let's just take one dimension, long ritual. And what happens during long rituals, even 1 hour classes on Bhagavatam? People start looking around and what else can we do right now? Now, there was no TikTok back in the day. But our rishis were psychologists, so what did they do? During the satra or the ritual, they would have katha. There would be a private satsang going on. All you ritualists, you do your thing. All of us jnanis, we'll do our thing. So this is what was happening. I see this happening in vivahas all the time. Here I'm facilitating a vivaha, and probably the first 3 rows are so into it, but in the back, they're taking selfies, already going to lunch and so on. So, Naimi Sharanya, there is a satra going on. Within that satra, there's a satsanga. That's how Bhagavatam comes to be. And in this satsanga, the primary teacher is Sutaji. I just gave you his genesis, correct? And the representative student is Shaunakaji. He's the greatest amongst those people there. He's a real elected political leader, but real in the sense that he led himself, and so others wanted to be led by him too. And Shaunakaji asks Sutaji 6 questions. What was the last one? Where does Dharma live? This dialogue took us to another dialogue, primarily between the primary teacher was Rishi Shukadeva, Rishi Shuka, and the primary student was Raja Parikshita. But those two are done now. Rishi Shuka is continuing with his enlightenment. Raja Parikshita has continued with his enlightenment. So now this dialogue also has to go away. In this chapter, the final 2 not so important questions are asked. Now even this great Shaunakaji becomes quiet. What does Naimi Sharanya mean? Where you become quiet. His final 2 questions on behalf of everyone is, please tell us the significance of a murti. Murti means icon, and all associated with the murti, the decoration specifically. And then that's the second last question, and really this final question, and then he doesn't speak again in Bhagavatam. Tell us the significance of Surya Narayana. Surya Narayana. Typically, what is Surya Narayana? The sun. And this is what Sutaji responds with. He starts this chapter with the answer of, I remember my teachers, and my teachers have taught this teacher, have taught this teacher, have taught this teacher, and so I'm teaching you now. One of the original teachers is Bhagwan Brahma, and when Puja Swami Tejomayananda was teaching us this, he shared really every time you open your mouth, you should remember your teachers. And I had casually shared that whoever gave you power, you should serve who gave you that power. And he starts to answer, here are some of the highlights. There are a lot of technicalities in this chapter. Here are some of the highlights. Sutaji shares that the trees of the earth are the hair of Bhagwan. When you see a murti and you see Bhagwan's hair, and you can see Bhagavati's hair here, this should take your mind to the trees of the earth, which should take you to Bhagwan. Got it? Controlled environment hair, uncontrolled environment trees, but finally it should take you to Bhagwan. Another highlight is Bhagwan's weapons, they symbolize the elements. So as an example, Bhagwan has a conch. What is the name of Bhagwan Narayana's conch? Panchajanya. That symbolizes the element of water. Where do you find a conch? In water, correct? At the store, you buy it at the store. So, see the sequence. Controlled environment, there is a conch. Uncontrolled environment, water itself. But both should bring you back to remembering Bhagwan. And so, Sutaji completes answering the first question by sharing, everything that is in the micro is in the macro. So who lives inside of you? Bhagwan. And now I take you to the verse I just read. He's explaining Surya Narayana, which is the sun, and what this verse shares. Vala kilyaha sahasrani shashtihi. There are 60,000 Brahma Rishi Amalaha. There are 60,000 Brahma Rishis who are completely pure. They're known as the Vala Kilyaha. And what are they doing? Purataha Abhimukam Yanti. They're in front of the chariot, facing the chariot. So Bhagwan Surya Narayana, or the sun, keeps on moving, but who's in front of this? These 60,000 rishis who are facing the chariot. Now I need you to visualize this, to really feel this. What is our entry point into the trust triangle? Our guide. Our guide directs us to divinity. These rishis are guiding us. What are they looking at? We start to look at that too. That's the map itself. How come they're not looking forward? They're looking backwards to Bhagwan Surya Narayana. And while they're doing this, stunvanti stutibihi vibhum, they're singing, they're praising divinity. Do you love that? Please love that. It's the last question of our 5-year course. I'll just read to you in English what the final verse of this chapter is. The worshipful Lord Hari, the ruler of all, the birthless, the deathless, and the eternal being, thus assumes various forms. What is one of his forms? The trees. What is another form? Water. What is another form? The sun. Why does he assume these various forms? From kalpa to kalpa, for the protection of the world. If you trust divinity, that means you know this teaching to be true. That means you are ever protected. Even a diplomat doesn't have pure immunity. Even Air Force One is not immune to weather. For one who feels ever protected, how can your mind be loud? Tomarakshaka kahoko darana. You are the protector. There is no logic to be afraid. Afraid means any negative thought. Oh.